Okay, let's get into this. Can you imagine a biker club so hardcore their members were actually forbidden from washing their jackets, their signature denim cutoffs?
Yeah, that one detail really jumps out, doesn't it? It tells you straight away we're not talking about your average weekend riders here.
Not at all. This is the Breed Motorcycle Club.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're looking at, well, news reports, government docs, even some academic stuff
Pretty solid mix of sources.
to really unpack their story, their whole history, how they started, the conflicts, and ultimately how it all ended.
And the goal here is really to get past the sort of romanticized outlaw image.
Exactly. Understand the reality, the inner workings, what made the breed tick, and what eventually led to their downfall.
So, starting at the beginning, what's fascinating is how they carved out their identity. They formed back in 1965, Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Founder was Salvatore De Giulio, right?
That's the name, yeah. And they were originally called New Breed.
New breed. Why the change?
Apparently, the full name just didn't fit properly on their colors, their insignia.
Seriously. That's
Yeah.
the reason. Just logistics.
Seems like it. Which tells you how important those visual symbols, the colors, really are in that world. It's like a tribal banner.
And just shortening it to breed. It sounds pretty stark, kind of primal.
It does. It suggests, a distinct group, maybe even seeing themselves as, well, a different breed.
And those colors you mentioned, the insignia on the jackets, pretty unique, weren't they?
Yeah, a Betsy Ross flag with a breed banner over it. Visually quite striking.
Worn on the sleeveless denim jacket, the one they weren't allowed to wash.
Right. And then there's the 1% patch, which is crucial.
Can you explain that for anyone who might not know?
Sure. It basically signifies that they identify as part of the 1% of motorcyclists living outside the law, unlike the supposed 99% who are law-abiding citizens.
So it's more than just a patch, it's a declaration, an outlaw badge of honor.
Absolutely. But getting the right to wear it wasn't easy. There were rules.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, first off, membership was restricted, white males only, and you had to serve a prospecting period, a kind of apprenticeship.
And what did that involve? Just hanging around?
Not quite. The sources mention specific requirements for prospects, like, well, like carrying out illegal activities, car theft, armed robbery, stuff like that.
Whoa. So crime was part of the initiation.
And they had to turn over the proceeds to the club. It wasn't just about loyalty, it was about proving you were willing to break the law for the club right from the get-go.
A baptism by fire. Or by felony, I guess.
You could say that, a very practical demonstration of commitment.
Now, here's something interesting from their early days. This guy, Jim, Irish Power, Prez.
He seems to have led an early expansion push.
Yeah, and his strategy was apparently focused on growth with, get this, minimal violence, while also boosting profits and membership.
That sounds like a tricky balancing act, especially in that world.
Right. How do you manage that? Minimal violence and outlaw biking.
Well, it's the classic dilemma for organized crime, isn't it? Violence asserts dominance, but too much brings heat from the law, disrupts business.
So power was maybe more strategic, thinking long-term?
It seems like it, trying to grow the empire without burning it down too quickly. And it worked for a while.
It did. How big did they get?
By the 1970s, the reports say they were the most prominent outlaw club in New Jersey, their peak.
And they expanded beyond Jersey.
Oh, yeah. Chapters popped up in New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Membership estimates at their height are like 3,000 to 4,000.
3,000 to 4,000. That's huge. That's not just a club. That's practically an army.
It was a very significant operation, definitely.
But, like you said, it didn't last forever. That peak faded.
Right. By the 1990s, things had contracted quite a bit. Their turf shrank mainly to Bucks County in Pennsylvania and Central and South Jersey.
Membership down to?
Down to around 900, the reports estimate. We even know some specific chapter locations. Middlesex County was a mother chapter, then South Jersey based in Riverside.
Operating out of a bar. The White Eagle Bar in Delran. Sounds about right.
Pretty typical.
Yeah.
And the Pennsylvania chapter in Bucks County. But then there was also the Nomad chapter.
Nomads, what does that mean? It sounds elite.
It usually is. Nomads aren't tied to one specific territory or chapter. They often answer directly to the national leadership.
So like troubleshooters. Or maybe enforcers.
Could be either or both. Experienced guys, highly trusted, deployable anywhere. It shows a level of organizational thinking, having that kind of flexible element.
Okay, so we have this structure, this reach. What were they actually doing? I mean, besides the initiation crimes
Well, the U.S. Department of Justice officially tagged them as an outlaw motorcycle gang. No surprise there.
and the list of alleged crimes.
It's extensive. Drug trafficking is a big one, especially methamphetamine. Then extortion, theft, witness intimidation, murder, assault, larceny, robbery, car theft, weapons violations. Even rape is mentioned.
Well, that covers a lot of ground. Anything else?
There's mention of them operating legitimate businesses too, tattoo parlors, transport companies.
Wow, the classic fronts, right, for laundering money or providing cover.
Exactly. Multiple purposes. And one really interesting detail, they were reportedly seen as infamous, even among other outlaw clubs.
Infamous how? More violent than others.
Partly, maybe, but also for allegedly recruiting members kicked out of rival clubs and even sometimes cooperating with law enforcement.
Cooperating with cops. That seems like breaking a major rule in their world.
It definitely goes against the usual outlaw code, suggests maybe a very pragmatic or perhaps ruthless approach, anything to get ahead.
So infamous is right. And you mentioned meth. They were big players there.
Very big, particularly in New Jersey. Major distributors, reportedly alongside their rivals, the pagans.
Speaking of rivals, it sounds like the breed didn't make many friends. Hell's Angels, pagans, warlocks, constant conflict.
Pretty much. It was all about territory, power, reputation, and these conflicts were incredibly violent.
Like the Hell's Angels clash in Cleveland.
March 1971. 5 people died in that one confrontation. Brutal.
And that wasn't isolated, was it?
No, the sources mention 2 decades of attacks by the Hells Angels against the breed, including a hand grenade thrown at the breed national president's house in Plainfield, New Jersey.
A hand grenade? Jeez. That's taking it up a notch.
Definitely serious warfare. Then there was another incident, July 71, Staten Island. A breed member killed, another wounded, 3 Hells Angels charged with assault.
And didn't you mention another Cleveland incident at a trade show?
Also, March 71, a huge brawl erupted. 4 breed members dead, 1 Hells Angel dead, dozens injured, like 84 arrests.
84 arrests. 57 charged with murder. That's insane. A trade show turned into a battlefield.
It really highlights the level of animosity and the willingness to use extreme violence, constant struggle for dominance.
And the pagans?
Yeah.
That rivalry seemed extra nasty.
Yeah, maybe more personal too. There's that incident in July 73, a pagan named Michael Trunk, who used to be in the breed.
Right, he was killed by a breed member, Ralph Marlborough Waldman, just for wearing pagan colors.
That's what the reports say. Waldman was convicted for it, and the bad blood didn't stop there.
The brawl at the police station after the arrests for the murder.
Just shows the absolute contempt for authority and the sheer hatred between them. Total chaos.
And later incidents, too. Stabbings, kidnappings.
Yeah, a stabbing at a Trenton tattoo parlor in 98, breed members attacking pagans, and back in 87, 89, assaults and kidnappings over territory and retaliation.
Like a breed member getting jumped in Philly, pagan turf, losing his colors.
Right, which then led to a supposed peace meeting where breed members showed up armed and got arrested on weapons charges. Constant back and forth.
And the warlocks weren't left out either.
Nope. December 88, they apparently kidnapped the breed's Bucks County chapter president, Craig Coyote Goodneck.
Retaliation for something the breed did.
That was the claim, yeah. Retaliation for assaults by breed members. Tit-for-tat violence.
Goodneck got away, though.
He did, escaped and reported it. But it shows the constant danger, the instability. This state of war must have put huge pressure on the club.
No kidding.
Okay.
Okay, let's shift back to how they were actually run. You mentioned chapters, nomads. Was there a formal structure?
Oh, yeah. Quite formal, actually. They had an executive board made up of the chapter presidents.
Headed by a national president.
Fair.
Like Diulio initially.
Exactly. And then each chapter had the standard officer roles: president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and a sergeant-at-arms.
Sergeant-at-arms. That sounds like the muscle, the enforcer.
Pretty much. Responsible for discipline, enforcing club rules, often through intimidation or, well, violence. It's surprisingly structured for an outlaw group.
It is, isn't it? That organization is key for any criminal enterprise, I suppose.
It provides hierarchy, control, efficiency for coordinating whatever they're doing, legal or illegal. Outlaw doesn't mean disorganized.
So, looking at specific incidents, the sources list quite a few, almost like a timeline of crime.
Yeah.
Anything stand out?
Well, there's the early death of their South Jersey president, Fred Chick Nicholas, in 68, shot dead. Officially called an accident during a motorcycle retrieval, but who knows? Hints at the dangers anyway.
And then the murder of the police officer.
Right, Newark officer John Snow in 1976. Killed during a robbery by associates, which included a breed member and a chapter president. That's a major escalation.
And that case got complicated, right?
Very.
With Vincent Landano.
Very. Landano was convicted, spent years in prison, but was later acquitted after appeals. It shows how deep the breed were into serious violent crime and the legal battles that followed.
It wasn't always big stuff, though. Internal conflicts, too.
Yeah, like the 1977 kidnapping of one of their own members, plus a woman supposedly over a $1,200 debt by other brood members.
Just $1,200.
Yeah.
Shows the ruthlessness, maybe.
And then you see the recurring busts for weapons and drugs, the 71 raid in Long Island, 13 arrests, the 95 arrests in Asbury Park. Seems like constant pressure from law enforcement.
That was probably their bread and butter, the drugs and guns trade.
Definitely seems like it, and it went right to the top. 1998, the Monmouth County chapter president, Eugene Bernardo, indicted for conspiracy to distribute meth.
Convicted.
Yep, convicted. Shows how central meth was to their business.
And then came the really ugly stuff around 2000. The indictments against DiIulio, the old man, and others.
Yeah, 10 members indicted. Charges included extortion and sexual assault, linked to protection rackets at strip clubs.
The details were pretty horrific, weren't they? Chaining dancers, assaults.
Very disturbing allegations, forced sexual acts, severe beatings. It paints a really grim picture of exploitation and predatory behavior.
What happened with those charges?
It was mixed, some acquittals, but a hung jury on several counts against DiIulio himself. Even without convictions across the board, it showed law enforcement was building a strong case against the leadership.
The pressure just kept mounting, didn't it? More indictments in 2003. Robbery, assault, witness retaliation.
Right, attacking a former member, trying to silence people, and even random violence like that road rage stabbing back in '76 by a member named Ernest Custer. Attempted murder conviction for that one.
There was also that death in Ohio, a prospective member.
Ah yes, Mark Pockett's chancellor in 1973. Died during a club meeting, apparently broke some rule. 3 members were convicted in connection with it.
Including the Ohio chapter president, who escaped.
Donald Kraut Treffs, convicted of first-degree murder, escaped but was recaptured, shows the internal violence could be deadly too.
But the real nail in the coffin seems to be Operation Breed on a Wire, 2006.
That was the big one, a year-long investigation, really comprehensive.
What did they find?
They initially charged 15 members with running a massive methamphetamine ring. We're talking huge quantities, seized over 120 pounds of meth, millions in street value. Plus cash, guns, explosives, vehicles, bikes, the works.
A major blow, and it didn't stop there.
No, they added racketeering charges later.
Yeah.
The grand jury found the whole drug operation was basically run by the Pennsylvania chapter president, John Jr. Napoli.
So they got the leadership.
They did. 19 breed members ended up convicted. Sentences were significant, anywhere from 3 years up to 36 years for guys like Napoli and other key figures.
36 years. That effectively ends it, doesn't it?
Pretty much. It decapitated the leadership, disrupted everything. The sources say the breed MC officially disbanded in 2006 as a result of these indictments.
Wow. End of an era, I guess. So, quick recap. Rapid rise, dominant in Jersey, brutal rivalries, deep into crime, especially meth.
Structured organization, but ultimately taken down by a major law enforcement operation.
What's the most surprising thing you take away from all this? That aha moment?
For me, it's probably that detail about them being considered infamous within the outlaw world, not just for violence, but for recruiting rivals cast-offs and maybe even cooperating with law enforcement sometimes.
Yeah, that breaks the mold, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Suggests a kind of ruthless pragmatism.
Exactly. A willingness to bend or break even the unwritten outlaw rules, set them apart.
So why should you, the listener, care about the Breed story? What's the takeaway?
Well, it's a raw look at organized crime, stripped of any glamour. It shows the dynamics, the violence, the consequences. It's about power control and how groups like this operate and eventually fall apart.
And it definitely makes you think about how these clubs are sometimes portrayed, right? The romantic rebel image versus this reality.
Absolutely. That disconnect is huge. The reality we've talked about, the meth trade, the exploitation, the sheer brutality, is a world away from some Hollywood version of biker freedom, something to really chew on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What really causes the rise and fall of groups like the Breed? Is it just law enforcement finally catching up?
Or are there internal factors too? Rivalries getting too hot, leadership failures, maybe even society changing around them? Lots of factors likely play a role in that life cycle, something to ponder.